What was you and Pac's relationship prior to his passing?
2 days before he died, I don't think he liked me.
Shouldn't have said nothing.
September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. Tupac Shakur, just 25 years old, is gunned down after a Mike Tyson fight. The world saw it as another violent chapter in the East Coast-West Coast war. But what if it wasn't a drive-by? What if it wasn't random? What if the person who could have stopped it didn't?
We know that we got strength in numbers. We already run the streets out here. So now we just gonna help some of these brothers get their money on because we know they got talent.
That's the claim Suge Knight just made. On his podcast from prison, the former death row boss didn't blame the East Coast. He didn't blame Biggie. He didn't even blame Diddy. He blamed Snoop. He said he wasn't just missing that night. He was listening, a single line, but it cracked open decades of silence. Because if Snoop really had a radio tuned into Tupac's final moments, then this wasn't a hit. It was an inside job, and it started long before the bullets flew. Just a year before the shooting, Tupac was behind bars, broke, isolated, and facing years in prison, until Suge Knight walked in with a pen and a promise. $1.4 million in bail money, plus a 3-album deal with Death Row Records. Overnight, Shakur went from inmate to icon, and Death Row went from powerful to unstoppable. What followed was a creative explosion. Within months, Tupac recorded All Eyes on Me, the first double-disc studio album in hip-hop history. It went multi-platinum, shattered records, and turned him into the new face of the West Coast. But that meteoric rise came with shadows. Because until then, the crown jewel of Death Row wasn't Tupac. It was Snoop. Snoop had carried the label through its early years with Doggy Style and his high-profile persona. But suddenly, he was no longer the priority. Suge was pouring his energy into Pac. Studio time, press, respect, it all shifted. And for someone like Snoop, that shift wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Inside Death Row, status meant survival. And watching someone else become the golden child, that meant your time was ticking. To the public, Snoop and Tupac were brothers, West Coast legends.
To release my mind, that's something I really needed, you know what I'm saying? I had
You did
fun in the
release your
water.
mind.
I went to the water, I was in the sky, me and Tupac was like 30 feet.
Icons of unity in the middle of a brutal rap war. But behind closed doors, that bond was breaking. Multiple insiders, from Outlaws members to studio engineers, described a growing chill between the two. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was silent, and that made it worse. Tupac was relentless in the studio, writing, recording, filming, making enemies, taking sides. He was magnetic, and everything at Death Row began to orbit around him. Meanwhile, Snoop was fighting legal battles and struggling to follow up his debut. Industry whispers turned into warnings. Snoop's being sidelined. Suge has got a new favorite. Then came the real crack, just days before the Vegas trip. On Hot 97, Snoop made a comment that sent shockwaves. I like Biggie. I like Puffy. I want to do some music with them.
I said I'd do a song. I want to do a song with them niggas. That's how I ended. I said I ain't got no issues with Puffy and Biggie. I want to do a song with them niggas.
At that point, Tupac wasn't just beefing with those guys. He was at war. That comment wasn't neutral. It was betrayal. In a 2023 interview, Snoop finally admitted the friendship was gone. A week before he passed, we was best of friends. 2 days before he passed, I don't think he liked me.
What was you and Pac's relationship prior to his passing?
2 days before he died, I don't think he liked me. New York niggas that shot at me and did all kind of shit to me, like...
That wasn't just reflection, it was confirmation. Because from the outside, it looked like a rift. But inside Death Row, it looked like a setup. September 7th, 1996, the night Tupac was ambushed. He flew into Vegas for one reason, to support Mike Tyson at the MGM Grand. Everyone expected Snoop to be there. He wasn't. According to Daz Dillinger, another Death Row artist, Snoop pulled him aside before the trip and said something chilling. Don't go. Something's gonna happen. At the time, it sounded like paranoia, but after the shooting, it sounded like a warning. And then came the real bombshell, dropped not by a rumor blog, but by Suge Knight himself. On his prison podcast, Suge claimed Snoop had a Nextel radio that night. Not a phone, a two-way real-time communication line, the same kind the death row crew used to stay in touch at events. He wasn't just missing, Suge said, he was listening. If that's true, then Snoop wasn't avoiding danger, he was monitoring it. And that raises questions nobody in hip-hop wants to answer. How did Snoop know something was coming? Why did he pull out at the last second? And if he had access to real-time comms, who was feeding him updates? Because that's not absence, that's surveillance. The streets always talked, but in 2019, one man made the whispers official. Keith D., a former Southside Crip, now the only person ever charged in connection with Tupac's murder, Keith confessed on tape. There was a deal, $1 million deal. Someone wanted Tupac gone, and they were willing to pay. He never said the name, but he confirmed the bag.
I ain't killed nobody, never did ever kill nobody. They don't have no evidence against me. Came and put me in Las Vegas.
And that's when Suge dropped another name, Snoop. Why? Because at the time of Tupac's death, Snoop had reportedly started distancing himself from death row and getting closer to the very circle Pac was at war with. Rumors swirled that Diddy, then at the height of Bad Boy's power, had opened a quiet back channel to Snoop, promising features, offering a way out, maybe even more. The timeline is suspicious. Tupac dies in September 1996. By early 1997, Snoop leaves death row. By spring, he signs with Master P's No Limit Records, in a deal worth millions. To the public, it looked like a fresh start. To Suge, it looked like a payoff. Especially when you factor in one more thing, Snoop's sudden peace offerings toward Biggie and Diddy right before the Vegas shooting. It wasn't diplomacy, it was alignment. And in this version of the story, that alignment came with a price tag. In 2022, headlines blazed with nostalgia. Snoop Dogg buys Death Row Records. To fans, it was poetic, the prodigal son returning home, now as the boss. But to Suge Knight, it was something else entirely. It was a hostile takeover, a quiet cleanup, a final move in a game that started nearly 3 decades earlier.
Nor do I want to see him get arrested. You know, let's get one thing straight, first and foremost. You know, me and Keefy D played on the same Pop Warner football team.
From his prison cell, Suge didn't celebrate. He fumed. He questioned the sale's legality, demanded to see the paperwork. And then, on his podcast, he hinted at something far more chilling, that the deal included unreleased Tupac masters. Songs recorded between All Eyes on Me and the Don Killuminati. Songs that, according to former producers, may have contained verses calling out betrayal, even naming names. And yet, not a single one of those tracks has surfaced. No leaks, no samples, no legal fights from Tupac's estate, nothing. It's as if they vanished, locked inside a vault now owned by the one person Suge believes had the most to gain from Pac's silence. This wasn't just a business move, it was control. Control over a legacy, control over the truth, control over the only man who once outshined him. After the bullets flew in Vegas, Tupac didn't die right away. He fought for his life in the ICU for 6 days. Family came, friends came. Snoop didn't. In interviews, he claimed he tried, said he fainted when he saw Pac in that condition, said Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mother, consoled him. But Suge tells a different story. He says Snoop never showed up at all, not once. To Suge, that wasn't weakness, that was strategy. Because if Snoop believed, like some claim, that Pac had survived and was being smuggled out under the radar, his absence wasn't fear, it was compliance. And the stories only get stranger. Michael Nice, a former Black Panthers-connected bodyguard, once claimed he helped fake Tupac's death. Said he smuggled him out after hearing about a hit order.
In control of releasing it to the world, and we're going to provide all the details. How we duped the world from Garden Shed, how Michael Nice came about.
Then, just before releasing proof, he turned up dead. Coincidence? Maybe, but stacked against Snoop's silence, it doesn't feel random. Because when someone you call brother is clinging to life, you don't vanish unless you have something to hide. And that silence, that missing hospital visit, might be the loudest clue of all. In 2024, after nearly 30 years of silence, someone was finally arrested for Tupac's murder. Keith D, the same man who once confessed on tape, now sits in custody, facing trial. Prosecutors believe he was in the car.
Shouldn't have said nothing. You know what I'm saying? Shouldn't have said nothing.
Suge Knight believes he wasn't alone. According to Suge, Keith is just the fall guy. The real trail, the money, the planning, the inside access, goes deeper.
There's only two people in the car. And Pac not going to tell the story. I ain't going to tell the story, but I tell you this. And I never had nothing bad to say about Orlando because, number one, he wasn't the shooter. Number two, he came to my hearing and told to let me go and tell the truth. They still didn't let me go.
All the way to executives, radios, and rival deals. And in that version of events, Snoop isn't just a survivor, he's the beneficiary. The one who left death row just in time. The one who secured a multi-million-dollar deal. The one who rebranded, rebuilt, and returned as the new owner. And if Suge is telling the truth, then Snoop didn't just inherit a label, he inherited silence. Because those missing tracks, the sudden exit, the buried verses, they point to something no courtroom has ever proven. That the most famous betrayal in hip-hop history didn't come from an enemy, it came from a friend. Now, with Keith D's trial set to begin, the industry is holding its breath. Because if he names names, if he talks about the money trail, if he exposes who really called the hit, it won't just shake West Coast rap, it'll rewrite it. Snoop's empire, Diddy's name, Death Row's legacy, all of it could burn under the weight of one man's testimony. And if that happens, we may learn something even darker. That Tupac didn't lose his life in a street feud. He lost it in a boardroom, to the very people who claimed to protect him. So now we wait, for the courtroom mic, for the confession, for the name. Because when the truth finally drops, will Snoop's empire survive, or will it all come crashing down?